Hey gorgeous! Welcome back to another Sims 4 speed building video. I hope you're all doing well. So today we're building the final lot in Newcrest. So I'm very excited. This is going to be a community lot and it's set up as a lounge, but the idea was that it could be easily converted into both a restaurant as well as a wedding venue because I do have a couple of wedding venues where you can have a wedding ceremony. I have one in Newcrest and I have one in Willow Creek as well. The one in Willow Creek is the botanical garden lot, which is set up as a park lot, I believe, and the other one is a little church / graveyard situation, and that one is set up as a wedding venue, but you can't really have like a full-on wedding there. It's rather just for like the ceremony. So if you have my wedding stories, you can actually set up separate events for your wedding. So you can have like a separate wedding ceremony, and then you can do a wedding reception on a different lot at a different time even, which I think is really convenient. So I thought if you would like to do like a wedding in my save file, you can have your wedding ceremony at like the Newcrest church, and then have your wedding reception here if you wish. So but yeah, this is a lounge and you can also easily convert it into a restaurant. All you would need to do is basically just change the lot type, because I have included all the necessary objects for a restaurant, which is like a chef's station, a host station, and a waiter station. I think that's all you need, and then obviously seating and toilets, but that goes for any kind of community lot, I think. So yeah, this is actually the second time around I built this lot. I finished this lot once before. That's also why I'm a little bit late. Of course, if you haven't noticed that I'm late, that's fine, but usually I upload on Sundays, and today is a Wednesday, obviously. So I was a little bit late, and that's because I built this lot once before and I just wasn't happy with how it turned out. Basically, I saw a really cool picture on Pinterest of like a New Orleans wedding venue, and it really reminded me of that scene in the originals, which is like a sort of covered courtyard, if you will. And I don't know, I felt really inspired to do something similar as that. So basically, I started off building that courtyard area and then started to build the exterior around it. And as much as I did love the courtyard area that I built, I didn't really like the exterior. I really wanted to blend it in with the rest of the world, but it's really hard to do in The Sims because obviously, in New Orleans, all the buildings are really close together, and you can't really do that in The Sims. So I ended up with, just long bare walls, and also, around the courtyard, I made some hallways, and they were really like big and empty, and I don't know, it was giving EA built this. And that's not what we want, of course. So basically, I finished it, I play tested it, I uploaded it onto the gallery. And then I was like, you know what? I really don't like this. I'm not going to upload this onto YouTube. I'm going to build it again. So if you're curious to, have a look at the previous lot that I built, you can still find it on my gallery. So, we all make mistakes, and it might be helpful, for you to kind of get an idea of how my thought process works when I'm building and stuff. And you might like it, you might find use in that lot. So I will leave it up on the gallery, but this one is going to be in my official Newcrest save file. So the exterior looks completely different. Basically what I did for this build is I went for a more sort of I don't know, like official sort of governmental building. Maybe this used to be like an old governmental building, like a city hall or something like that. And then later on it was converted into a really, really fancy lounge. And I built it in a more sort of Second Empire Victorian style. So it doesn't on one hand, it doesn't really fit with the other architectural styles in this particular neighborhood, but then I feel like it still kind of fits. So to me, the way I can best describe it is it stands out, but it also fits in, if you know what I mean. So I hope you agree. I hope you feel like this build doesn't look too out of place in the world. I quite like it. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. And of course, I really wanted to give it a very sort of tropical feel. I'm very inspired by like the New Orleans buildings, New Orleans climate, and there's a lot of palm trees and like colorful plants and stuff like that. So I wanted to incorporate that as well in the exterior of this build to make it look like it fits in into the rest of the world. So yeah, that's basically it in terms of what I have to say about the exterior. So yeah, I think we will soon be jumping into the interior anyway. I'm just kind of finishing like the last final touches of the landscaping, and then we will move on to the courtyard area. So yeah, it's like very sort of classical style. Oh, by the way, I think before we start working on the interior, I'm going to do the lighting, and I'm really, really happy with how the lighting turned out on this build. I used a lot of, I think it was from the Stranger Field pack, like those sort of tube lights to, I don't know, kind of highlight certain features of the build and just make it look that much more like a really commercial building. And I've used that trick once before. This was actually on a residential lot. I used this trick once before on the neoclassical build that I did for the Auto family in Willow Creek. So if you're curious, you can check that out. So definitely this build does remind me a little bit of that build, but this one is definitely, I would say this one is a lot older. This building, this would be a lot older, but it has been renovated to, I don't know, maybe it had different functions in the past. Like I just said, maybe it was like a city hall or some kind of governmental building, and now it's a lounge / restaurant situation. So yeah, and I think I've said this before, but usually I'm not like a huge fan of making multi-functional builds, especially community lots. But like what I mean by that is, let's say you're making like a whole lot with different like separate buildings, and then one building is like a restaurant, and one building is like a bar, and then the other one is like a retail store, and then you just kind of have to go and set the lot types. But I'm not a huge fan of that because your Sims will just still walk into the other buildings and they just don't function properly. And the way that I set this build up is that no matter if you are going to pick the lounge type or if you're going to pick the restaurant type, the whole lot just still kind of functions as one, and you can just play with it however you like. I quite like playing with restaurants, but it does mean that you have sort of less flexibility with how your Sims sort of behave on the lot, and I feel like you have a lot more flexibility when you set it up as a lounge. And when you set it up as a lounge, you can also use it as a wedding venue. However, I do want to note that if you wish to have your wedding reception here, you'd probably want to tweak it a little bit, because it's like this is definitely more of a commercial building that's sort of used, like sort of open 24/7, right? If you're going to have your wedding here, you're probably not going to want random Sims wandering onto this lot, and you want to set it up to suit your wedding anyway, I guess. But you might want to add stuff like a dance floor, and like a what's it called? Like a fondue table. I don't think it's a fondue table, like a buffet table, I guess. You might want to use items like that. You might even want to put a wedding art here, but like I said, I would prefer to do the ceremony on a different lot and have the reception here. And you can rearrange the table seating and stuff like that as well. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to let you know. Like, it is perfect for a wedding venue. I would love to have my own personal wedding on a venue like this, but it isn't necessarily like, you know, ready to go to have your wedding here. And that's basically just because I want this to look more like a commercial lot that, you know, you could just go to anyway, and maybe take like a sim on a date or something. Like, it doesn't necessarily always need to look like a wedding venue. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. So as you can see, this is that little courtyard area, and I'm so happy with how this turned out. Obviously, this was like the main inspiration for this entire build, and I hope you can kind of understand what I mean by it's like sort of inspired by the originals, where you have that sort of you know, those archways and little balconies around the courtyard. And I don't know, I really like it. It was really the main inspiration for the build. And that would also be the restaurant area. So if you're going out to have dinner here, if you choose to play with it as a restaurant, that's where your Sims will be seated, which I think is just, you know, very romantic to go on to a romantic dinner date. And yeah, I was actually struggling a lot with this sort of front portion of the build, which is like the lounge area. I think I spent like an hour trying to do the floor plan. I rearranged it like 5 times, and I just couldn't get it to work because unfortunately it isn't very big. And I could not get the stairs to fit. As you can see right now, I still feel like they're a little bit in a funny place. But with the couches next to it, like, I feel like it makes a bit more sense. But yeah, so yeah, it's just a very standard sort of lounge area. Obviously, I put like a piano and a microphone here because they are required for the lounge lot type, and your Sims can just kind of hang around here, order a drink, and stuff like that. And then upstairs, there isn't a whole lot going on, but I wanted to make sure to put a kitchen in here, of course, to make it functional as a restaurant, but also so if you're going to have like a wedding here, your Sims can have a caterer, or they can, you know, make like an emergency wedding cake or something upstairs, so you won't have to go off of this lot or order something, and you know, it will basically be difficult to have a wedding reception if you don't have a kitchen available. So that's upstairs. It's a very sort of sad small room, but it works. I play tested it. And also upstairs you will just find the toilets, which I think we will be moving on upstairs very quickly. I do really like how this sort of lounge area turned out. Like, it's very dark and cozy and chic. I kind of imagine that, you know, this would be like a very expensive place to go to if you want to drink like a glass of wine. Like, just one glass is going to be like 20 simoleons or something. Like, just a very expensive, very chic sort of area. And that's, you know, what I wanted to achieve with this lounge as well. Although it is in the more cheaper area of the world, I guess, but that's fine. Like, I feel like this street is sort of the commercial area, and then behind I have 2 starter houses. But yeah, it's The Sims. Like, you gotta have your starter houses somewhere, right? So yeah, what else? I'm just changing you know, the final details and going around and adding little bits and bobs here and there to you know, make it look really fancy, basically. I feel like I'm overusing that word, but it's fine. And yeah, I wanted to make sure to have a lot of sort of moody lighting here as well. I know a lot of builders love to just place a bunch of those like little spotlights around the place. Like, I only use those basically to light up the build so I can see whilst I'm building. But then when I'm finally going around and doing the final details, usually I either delete all of them or like hide them into like other lighting fixtures, because I feel like, you know, in real life you wouldn't just have like a bunch of randomly placed spotlights on the ceiling. It just looks stupid. So I always try and avoid using those as just like the standalone lights. And because this is like a very fancy sort of romantic place, I really wanted to have like romantic and dim lighting. And also in real life, I really can't stand like bright lighting. Like I always, especially if I want to relax somewhere and I'm going out to dinner, like I much prefer dim lighting. And I know that's very like a cultural thing. Like in some cultures they really like bright lighting, but for me I really much prefer the dim lighting. But you can easily change that, of course, if you don't like it. So yeah, I think there's not much more to say about this build. I'm just like finishing it off, putting the final stuff in here, just the toilets basically, and I think then we are about done. So I think I'm just going to leave this voiceover right here. I really hope that you did enjoy this video. If you did, please let me know by leaving a like or a comment, or feel free to subscribe so you can stay up to date of all my future videos, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!